let's talk about something that's incredibly difficult but also incredibly important. We're diving into family conflict, especially when a loved one is dealing with a serious illness like ALS. It's a journey nobody asks for, and it can bring up tensions that feel almost impossible to handle. So today, we're going to look at why that happens and, more importantly, what we can do about it.
You know, this quote really nails it. A serious illness isn't just one person's battle. Nope, it sends these shockwaves out through the entire family. It puts this immense pressure on everybody, and it can crack open old fault lines or create brand new ones you never saw coming.
So, if you take away just one thing from the get-go, please let it be this. If your family is fighting, you're not failing. It doesn't mean you don't love each other. It's a totally normal human response to carrying an unbelievably heavy weight. You're not alone in this.
All right, so let's get into the big question. Why do good, loving families find themselves at odds? Well, it usually boils down to the unique pressures that an illness like ALS creates. All of a sudden, you're slammed with huge decisions that have to be made, like yesterday, and everyone's roles are getting turned upside down. It's basically a perfect storm for conflict.
I mean, think about it. When everyone is stressed to the max, what's the first thing to go? Patience, right? It just disappears. And then misunderstandings start piling up. What one person says isn't what the other person hears, and every little reaction feels 10 times bigger, because everyone's emotional volume is already turned way, way up.
But to really get what's going on, we have to look deeper, under the surface. These arguments, they're not usually about people having bad intentions or trying to be difficult. They're being fueled by these really powerful, often totally invisible, emotional forces churning away inside every single person in the family.
And what we found is that these forces can pretty much be boiled down to 4 key drivers. Okay, so first you've got fear. Then comes grief. Then just sheer bone-deep exhaustion. And finally, you have those old family dynamics just waiting for their moment to pop back up.
So let's start with fear. We're talking about that deep, gnawing worry about the future, about money, about how life is just changing in every possible way. That kind of fear rarely shows up looking like fear. Instead, it puts on a disguise. It shows up looking like anger, or sometimes as a desperate need to control every single little detail, because that's the only way to feel like you have some handle on a situation that feels completely out of control.
The second driver is grief. But it's a really specific kind of grief. It's called anticipatory grief. The whole family is grieving losses as they're happening. The loss of independence, the shared activities you used to love, the future you all thought you were going to have. And living with that constant grief just leaves everyone's nerves completely raw.
Third, let's talk about exhaustion. And this is especially true for the primary caregivers. When you are physically and emotionally drained day in and day out, trying to regulate your own emotions feels like an impossible task. You're running on fumes, and it's just so much easier to snap or react impulsively than it is to take a breath and respond calmly.
And finally, those old family dynamics. You know the ones. An illness like this doesn't just magically erase decades of family history. Oh no, it puts a giant magnifying glass on it. The responsible child, the distant one, the one who always tries to make peace, all those old roles come roaring back, and they bring all their old baggage and tensions right along with them.
So we have these powerful hidden forces: fear, grief, exhaustion, old dynamics. How do they actually, show up? Well, they don't stay hidden. They tend to erupt in some very specific, really common situations. We call these conflict flashpoints.
And here it is. This is probably the #1 source of tension right here. Different roles create completely different realities. The primary caregiver is in the trenches, living the day-to-day, 24/7 reality of the illness. They feel overwhelmed, they feel alone. Meanwhile, you've got other family members watching from a distance. They feel helpless, maybe even excluded. And because of that, their suggestions for how to do things, even if well-intentioned, can land like heavy criticism. Both people are seeing the same situation, but through completely different lenses. And of course, the tension flares up in other predictable places. You've got sibling rivalries making a comeback, huge fights over the financial strain of it all, and then the heartbreaking disagreements over big medical decisions. You even see it in emotional withdrawal where someone pulls away and everyone thinks it's because they don't care, but really it's because they feel so powerless they just shut down.
I want to just pause here for a second, because this is so important. Let's read it again. Conflict does not mean a family has failed. It simply reflects the immense emotional weight of the situation. This isn't a report card on your family's love. It's just a symptom of the incredible stress you're all under.
Okay, So, knowing all this, understanding the why behind the fighting, how do we actually move forward? This next part is all about action. We're shifting from diagnosing the problem to talking about practical, real-world steps you can take to start building some bridges.
So here are 5 concrete strategies. Number 1, and this is the most important, center the patient's voice. Their wishes need to be the North Star for all the big decisions. Second, share the responsibilities. Find jobs for everyone. Even family far away can handle bills or do research online. Third, communicate regularly. Get on a schedule for family calls so frustrations don't just build up and explode. Fourth, don't be afraid to bring in a neutral third party, like a social worker, to help guide those really tough conversations. And finally, number 5, accept that this is messy. Everyone is going to make mistakes. You have to make room for forgiveness and a little humility.
All right, so let's zoom out one last time and talk about what might just be the core message in all of this. It's about how to find your way back to compassion and connection, especially when that feels like the hardest thing in the world to do.
I really want you to hold on to this. If you can peel back all those prickly layers of anger and frustration and defensiveness, what you will almost always find at the very center is love and fear. People are fighting because they care so much, and because they are absolutely terrified of losing someone they love. Seeing the fear behind the anger can change everything.
And that's why, honestly, the most powerful tool you have in your toolbox is compassion. Compassion for your brother, for your mom, and just as critically, compassion for yourself. Everyone is struggling here. Everyone is doing the best they can in an impossible situation. A little bit of grace can soften even the hardest edges.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. In the middle of all the struggle, where can your family find those little moments of unity? How can you remind each other that, at the end of the day, you're all on the same team, just trying to get through this together? Thanks for taking the time to explore this with us.